Hey everybody, it's Peter, and in this review we're going to take a look at the 2024 Suzuki's DR-Z400, or because I'm Canadian and I'm filming in Canada, you'll probably hear me say the DR-Z. DR-Z sounds cooler, DR-Z is what it's actually called in this country, so if you're American, don't give me a hard time about how I pronounce it. It's literally what it's called here. We pronounce Z's as Z's, and every time I do anything with a Z or a Z in it, I get in trouble by the Americans for saying it wrong. So that's how it's said. But this thing is cool. We just reviewed the 650 a couple days ago, and we talked about how that could be sort of an inexpensive adventure bike, and of course it's very old tech. Now this one has a few high-tech pieces, but it is still also kind of older style. It's still carbureted but doesn't have a choke, so we're going to talk about all those types of things. There's a lot of retro in this bike, but there's a lot of goodness. And when we talk about bikes and different bikes in different segments, there are a few bikes in each segment that are just iconic bikes for the segment, and that's what this is. So we're going to talk about what this is. I'm a big fan of it. We're going to go through all the details in depth, and if you have any questions that I don't cover in this video, make sure you subscribe and let me know in the comment section the things you want to know about it, because I'm filming here at McLean Sports and they give me complete access to their entire vehicle lineup. So if you have a question, I can come back to it both in the comment section and in future videos, so we can kind of create a video database of information. And this is I think my third 2024 bike of the year, maybe fourth or fifth 2024 bike of the year. I cover all kinds of brands. The 2024 just starting to come in, so if you're interested in everything that's new, make sure you follow this channel, subscribe to it, and we'll make sure we keep you covered with everything that's new the second it arrives. So let's get going with this review. All right, we're gonna start at the front wheel here, and the reason I always start at the front wheel is because you can tell what the manufacturer intended with this bike when you look at the front wheel. Now, this bike actually falls a little short of that. So this bike is intended for far more off-road capability than on-road capability, but because it's a dual sport, it's street legal, and they put on Bridgestone Trailwing tires. These are pretty good on-road tires for an off-road bike, but they're not great fully off-road tires. And the funny thing is, when you check out the website here, they literally talk about the 21-inch front and the 18-inch rear as being the common tire size, so you can put pretty much any kind of tire you want on here. Now, you do want to make sure that whatever tires you do put on here are not full-on dirt bike, that they're DOT approved, so in other words, they can go on the roads. You can still get really aggressive tread to go on the road, but if you want to go way further off-road, then these tires are great for. These tires are good for things, but if you want to go way further off-road, you can always swap that out, and they're very open about that. So again, while we look at the front wheel to see the manufacturer's intention, they're saying, hey, this is fine on-road as is, this is fine for light off-road, but this thing's way more capable off-road than you might think. And we can tell that. We got the spoked wheels here, much like the off-road. We got a disc brake there, but really the way you can tell this is great off-road is looking at the suspension. So first of all, you've got these old-fashioned tubes there. They're gonna keep you from getting debris built up so you don't ruin your fork seals. But what we're gonna do is zoom in to the bottom of these gold color Showa forks, and they are fully adjustable cartridge shocks, and you can see that because they have the compression adjustment softer and harder right there. There's also rebound adjustment and preload adjustment on top. We'll show you those later as well. So now you're seeing the real purpose of this bike. This isn't about an on-road, off-road bike. This is about a fully capable off-road bike that is legal on the road. And that's where you start to see, hey, this bike's got something special about it. So as we take a look at the heart of the bike here, I want to talk about suspension travel. We're going to talk about engine as well. 11.3 inches of travel in the front, 11.6 inches of travel in the back. And of course, in the back, you also have sort of a hidden, on a modern bike, they would show like all sorts of stickers on this sort of piggyback reservoir. Again, adjustable rear shock. It's down in there, kind of a very long shock in there, which again, provides a lot of travel, but also just a lot of precision in there. The reason you have this piggyback shock is as the shock compresses and creates some heat, it's going to take that oil out here and allow for very consistent performance off-road, which is what you really want. So again, like I said, a modern bike would put stickers on here and make a big deal of it. This is just, not about flash, this is about pure function. So 11.6 in the rear, 11.3 in the front, and that means you've got all the off-road travel you need. Now let's also talk about the engine. It says 400 there on the sticker right over there, 398cc single cylinder. This is an engine built for torque, and that's what you really want when you're off-road. So a 5-speed transmission drives a single cylinder engine. It's got an aluminum piston, which is a little bit more of a modern piece in there as well. They talk about how it's weight savings over the another type of like forged or whatever other kind of piston, metal, not aluminum piston. Also, the frame on this is a steel chromoly frame with an aluminum subframe. So again, some concessions to a modern bike, which keeps it light. It's 317 pounds. We're going to show you what it looks like with me sitting on it and talk about a few features right now. Okay, so the one thing you need to know about a dual sport bike is they are tall. Now, people want to always know my inseam. I think it's 32-ish, doesn't really matter. I know that you really want to know. I'm about 6 feet tall, I'm proportional, and you can see this is a tall bike. So what I'm gonna do is swing my leg over, and again, you've got quite a bit of adjustment in the suspension. So when I'm on this bike, I am tippy-toeing as a 6-footer, proportional 6-footer, so it's going to be tall. Now you can soften the suspension a little bit, but the reality is this bike is built for off-road. Now, you do have a few really cool things about this. Even though it's tall, I think it could be very beginner friendly, especially if you've ridden a dirt bike in the past. If you haven't, that's fine. Some people are really intimidated by tall bikes. There's no real need to be intimidated. The benefit with this bike is if you were to drop it, it's really probably not going to break anything, or certainly won't break anything important. But I still think this could be a beginner bike. And the reason I say that is because a lot of experienced riders love having one of these around. So as a beginner bike, you can do everything with it. You can go on-road, you can go off-road, but you can also go way off-road. And if you want to upgrade to more of a street bike, you can sell this and buy that because they retain their value well, but you can also keep it on your stable of bikes if you have the means to do so, and it can be a bike you can keep forever. So again, tall seating position, but that 317 pounds, it feels super light. Once you get into those 650s, depending on the model, some of those bigger 650cc bikes, you know, adventure style, dual sport type bikes, they can feel much heavier than this. This feels like a dirt bike that happens to be street legal. So there's what I look like sitting on there. We're gonna bring you a little closer. One thing I will mention as well, very sharp turning radius compared to a normal street bike for sure, which also keeps you very good off-road. I will point out that my feet are currently on a rubber foot peg. We can show you those a little bit later, but there is a little bit of vibration dampening in there. You can remove that rubber and just have the cleat in there for just the metal to grab your boot if you want. 10-liter fuel tank in here, not a huge fuel tank, typical of dual sports. A lot of people say, hey, I want a bigger tank for my adventure style bike, and that may be true. The reason they have lightweight fuel tanks is they're fairly low relative to the bike. They don't come up over here like a bigger fuel tank, and that keeps the weight low and centered, which again makes it more maneuverable, which makes it great off-road. All right, let's take a little closer look. We're gonna take a look at the dash, a few other things, and some lighting. I wanna talk about lighting on this bike for a specific reason, so let's do all of that right now. All right, so before we go to the dash and the lighting, I did mention the foot pegs. I want to show you the passenger foot pegs are right here as well. You can take a passenger up here, a little bit bigger seat than on some dual sport bikes, so you've got that. And then we'll zoom in here just so you can see exactly what I was talking about with the regular pegs. You've got that rubber mounted piece here that can be removed, and then that steel grippy frame. So rubber is great for the road, keeps you a little bit vibration dampening in there, and it's a softer rubber. But again, if you want to go off-road and have some grip in the mud and that kind of thing, you've got the ability to pull those out and make it on full-on dirt bike. Now, let's take a look at the dash, and then we'll work our way over to some lighting. All right, taking a look at the dash, remember this is a 2024 bike, and we're getting to the point where you could almost say, oh yeah, it was retro designed, right? I mean, you look at something like the Hyundai's design language lately, and they're doing this sort of retro kind of everything square kind of look on some of their newest cars and their electric cars and stuff like that. So this isn't retro design, this is just old design. But the point is, it works. It's everything you need. So let's just zoom in for a second. We're gonna look at the suspension over here on the right side. You can see there's your rebound adjustment and your preload adjustment in there. Both fork tubes do have that same sort of adjustment here. You haven't got the right angle to see both settings right there, but it looks identical to what you see right there. And then you've got the key here. I love the key, because when we talk about lighting, I'm gonna show this. This is something that I haven't seen since my 1980s bikes in the ignition, and maybe I'm just not paying attention, but there is an off setting, there is an on setting, and there's a P setting. That turns everything off, but it leaves your parking light on, in other words, your rear brake tail light, and that's it. So, you know, just a way to park it with the light on, I guess. Didn't used to see that. I mean, you just haven't seen, I haven't seen that since 80s bikes. Maybe I'm just not paying attention. You guys will probably correct me that your modern bike has it and I just haven't paid attention. But again, simple is the key here. Let's zoom in and take a look at everything here. I'm gonna try to get everything in here. All right, there we go. We'll zoom right in. Boom, there we go. All right, so what you're missing is the coolant light. There is some coolant on this bike down there. You've got your high beam light. Let's just flash that on. Turns on like that. You've got your signal lights. We'll talk about signals and switches and that kind of thing. Now, what's interesting is the 650 that we looked at the other day has a slightly different green than the neutral light. This one has the same green for neutral and for signal light there. It doesn't matter which signal you turn on. You have a single light, which works fine. Let me just scroll a little bit down so you can see all of the lettering there on the dashes. All right, on the top, blinking right there is your clock. I apparently have set the second hands, haven't done that yet, so I'll have to adjust that. How do you adjust it? Pretty simple. How do you adjust a trip? Reset and time and all that, reset right there. Trip A we got trip B over here. You can cycle through, cycle through there, so trip, and we go to time. We're just gonna, let's just adjust it. Or we can adjust the seconds. I don't want to do that. See, very simple to do. I mean, super simple. So we're gonna go back to your trips over here, trip B, trip A, and that's all you have. So again, kilometers is on the Canadian bike is what you see. No tachometer on this bike. Again, it's a single cylinder bike. So as we zoom out again, think of a single cylinder bike as something that has a lot of torque. You know, on a typical sport bike, you're gonna get your power at the very top of the rev range, you know, at the high revs. On a single cylinder bike that has a lot of torque, you don't need to rev past a certain point where you get power. So in other words, revving to red line, you actually lose power anyways. So you can feel that when you're driving, which is why you don't really need a tack on this. You're gonna accelerate, you'll feel the power, you move on, shift gears, it's a 5-speed transmission, simple stuff. Now let's take a look at some of the controls here because they're also pretty retro. All right, first thing we gotta show you is the mirrors up there. There I am, and square mirrors, simple, same as the 650 that we looked at the other day. Why are they square? Why are they like this? They're cheap to replace, and that's a good thing if you fall. The other thing is with the square mirrors, it's a little bit inside of the handle here, so if you do fall, you're probably not gonna hit your mirror. You are gonna hit your bar end. They could be a tiny bit better for visibility, but they're pretty good for what you're doing. And again, you're probably more concerned about knocking them if you're going off-road than you are about overall perfect visibility. Do your shoulder checks, you can see everything you need to see. All right, let's zoom into the controls right here, and you have pretty typical stuff. There's nothing over here. That you're seeing there is the rubber on the edge of the clutch lever there, which is nice and light. What you have here is high beam and low beam, pretty clicky stuff. The signal light is interesting because it clicks on, but it has almost a snappy feeling, like it feels like a little snap when you cancel it. I don't know if you can hear it because I'm wearing a mic, it's not near the microphone's not near there, but it has a real snap to the feel there, the horn down here. A little bit smaller buttons, smaller horn button for sure than on some other modern bikes, but again, totally functional, works very well. Let's check out the other side real quick. Throttle side, a couple things I want to point out. These grips, probably not super comfortable over a long trip on a bare hand. You should wear gloves when you ride anyways, and these are really good for if they get dirty to still have some grip and traction. So if you dump this fully in the mud and it was caked in mud, you'd still have grip and traction. But like I said, wear gloves with them because they have a little bit of a rougher feel. It's not even a rougher feel, just a, you know, as you're gripping it tight, it kind of digs into your hands more. Actually, let's just show you. So let's see if that'll work on camera. Do that, flash my hand around. You can sort of see the grip in my hand there. So again, if you're squeezing this hard, it has quite a bit of impact on your hand. So not a big deal, just wear gloves and you'll be totally fine, and it's great for grip, but that's why you don't see grips like that anymore. Kill switch, old-fashioned kill switch here, works really well. Very small start button switch. Again, simple is the key here. Now let's talk about some of the lighting on this bike. All right, lighting on a dual sport. So for a 2024 bike, you wouldn't expect to see a 1980s style car headlight that creates a little bit of heat and not a ton of light. Now, when we're running, it may be actually a little bit brighter, and I'm not on the perfect angle to show the brightness, but you can see the yellowy tone to this. So a couple things going on. A lot of modern bikes are moving to LED lights. I'm okay with this staying as is. I'm a big fan of LED lights, but I'm okay with this staying as is because, like I said, it is literally like a modern or like an 80s car light. It's glass, and it has very clear field of view because of the glass, not the plastic. But if this breaks, it's dirt cheap to replace, and that's why you're still going with this instead of LED lights. As we take a look at the signals there, again, still easy to replace, cheap to replace, incandescent lights there. So again, while I always talk about liking seeing LED lights because of that brighter, whiter light, I'm gonna forgive this because again, if you drop this, if you damage it, this is cheap to replace. If you're going on a real nighttime adventure, it's not gonna give you as bright a light as some other modern bikes. But again, drove these bikes for years with these kinds of lights, no real issue. Let's take a look at the back end. All right, taking a look at the back end, not a ton of style here, pretty square and effective, you know, mud flap type there, it keeps the mud off you. Again, typical square, old-fashioned taillight, those are super cheap to replace if you break them, and same thing with the signal lights. One thing I want to point out, as we'll zoom into right over here right now, is you do have a helmet lock on this bike, and that makes this bike a very practical bike, something you can take to school, you know, take to work, that kind of thing. You can take to the store, put your thing on there. And I'm looking at the toolkit right now because I'm going to try to zoom into there in 1 second if I can get it centered in. So let's see if we can do that. There's your toolkit there. I have it open just so you can see that there is a little bit of room around there to fit some things in there. Obviously you want to keep this done up, but if you did want to take you know, a wallet in there, don't leave it in there because it's not proof. It's not it is not, what do we call that, theft proof. The zippers are actually a little stiff, not stiff in the sense that they are not quality. It's stiff in the sense of this is not going to accidentally come undone. So I actually kind of like the way those zippers work, but you can fit something in there, but that's all you can fit in there as far as factory. So we're going to go back to the overall view. If you do want to tie things down, you've got the foot peg areas. There's a spot where you can tie some stuff down. And again, the seat is big enough to fit stuff behind you on there. Basically, if you want to take stuff with you, wear a backpack. That's what works best on this bike. So let's talk about who this bike is for, why it's gone virtually unchanged for so long, why it's kind of a legend in the class, and if it's right for you. So let's start at the very top and talk about if it's right for you. If you are a beginner, this is a strong bike for you, but it's very tall. So most of the time I would not recommend this to a beginner with no motorcycle experience, but if you have dirt bike experience, are very comfortable with a tall bike, great beginner bike. The reason it's a great beginner bike is because you can stay with it for so long. This bike is $100 more base price in Canada than the $650 dual sport that Suzuki sells. Why? Basically that boils down to great suspension. So a lot of people underrate suspension and overrate the engine as far as enjoyment of riding. This is not a Hayabusa. It's not going to be an incredibly fast bike, but it is very good at what it's meant to do. And a lot of time when you buy a dual sport bike, people are let down by the suspension. You talk about the reviews of dual sports and, you know, one bike's too soft, one bike's too firm, or it doesn't, you know, the rebound isn't quite set right on one bike. And all of that leads to buying new suspension to make that bike worthwhile. This bike has a great, reliable engine. You notice no choke lever on the controls here. So again, although it's carbureted, it's push to start, it works like that, no problem. But where a lot of dual sports are let down is in that suspension, and because you have not only good suspension but also adjustable suspension, it's going to work for you both as a newer rider, as a more experienced rider. It's going to work for you depending on if you want to go a road trip or if you want to go an off-road trip, and you can adjust it on the fly as you go. You've got tools with you already right here. You can just, you know, tweak up the suspension and make it exactly the bike you want for exactly the type of riding you're doing, and also the type of rider you are. If you're a larger rider, smaller rider, aggressive rider, casual rider, you can make this bike anything you want. And part of the reason it keeps its resale value is because with that great suspension, anybody else can buy this bike and they don't have to be your body type or your riding style or anything else, and it works and it goes for them. I like dual sports that you can drop because then you're not afraid to take them off-road. If you drop it, you pick it up, and again, all the pieces and components here are all capable of sort of being dropped. Most of the time it won't break. If something does break, like a signal light, a brake light, super cheap to replace, easy availability. And then the other cool thing about these bikes is because they've been relatively unchanged for so long, sure, you've got Suzuki accessories, but you've got a number of accessories from the overall aftermarket that can really tweak this up and make it yours and keep it special as well. So, I mean, Suzuki recommends right from the own website, hey, if you don't want these tires, you can fix that, you can change that. And again, there's nothing wrong with these tires. They're better for on-road than many other off-road tires. But if you are buying this bike with the intention of just using the roads to go to cool trails, then absolutely you should upgrade or you can upgrade the tires. And this isn't really that expensive for what you get. You've got good power, you've got basic controls that do everything you need to. And again, sometimes we talk about buying bikes in you're buying features. Really the reason you buy a motorcycle is you're buying fun. And when we go fun factor for $1, this is about as good as it gets. This thing does everything you would want it to do to get on road, to go anywhere, and then off-road, it's a full-on dirt bike that is fully capable. So, Who's this bike for? Someone who wants to adventure close to home, somebody who, again, this isn't really a full adventure bike, but you could use it on adventures, but this thing can go anywhere a trail bike can for the most part. If with a skilled rider, absolutely it can. And then it has legs. In other words, it has the legs to adapt because of the suspension. You've got a rock solid, reliable engine. It's a super interesting bike to me. And this is the 2024 version, equipped just like previous versions. It's going to hold its value when you sell it used, but you can buy it new knowing that you have to worry if it's been abused or if the other guy did the oil changes and that kind of stuff. You can buy it new, you've got some warranty, and off you go. So very cool bike. Let me know if you own one of these bikes. Tell me what you love about it in the comments below. And again, make sure you subscribe. This is just the second Suzuki that we've done. That's a 2024. We're gonna cover the entire Suzuki lineup. We're gonna cover pretty much every motorcycle lineup, all the 2024s right here on this channel. So thanks everybody for watching, and thanks McLean Sports for giving me complete access to their vehicle lineup. If you wanna check out this bike for yourself, swing on down to Fredericton, New Brunswick, check out McLean Sports, sitting right here for you. We'll talk to you in the next one.